My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called F.A.T.E, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your F.A.T.E. Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of F.A.T.E. How's everybody doing today? On today's show, I have one of the world's leading hypnotherapists. He specializes in past life regression therapy. He has a new book out called The Adventures of a Hypnotherapist. Was I under? And he is here to tell his story today, guys. Steve, welcome to your F.A.T.E, my friend. How you doing today?
Good, thanks, Christy, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming aboard and taking the time today. I read your book, sir, and it left me a little bit gobsmacked and fascinated by the entire process of what you do. And I can't wait to get into it and talk about past life regressions and what they mean and all of it. But I'd love to start first with your own journey as to how you got to be where you are today as a hypnotherapist.
Yeah, okay. Well, I would love to say that my career as hypnotherapist was sort of set in stone before I was born, and it was always going to be my path. It was actually quite by accident. So I was a director of a publishing company in the UK, which went bust and took some of my money with it. So I had to do something pretty quickly. And my father said, "Well, why don't you look at being a hypnotherapist?" And he'd actually become fascinated with hypnotherapy as a result of stopping smoking a few years earlier. And my father is a left brain scientist, and so he couldn't get his head around how it was that when he was relaxed by this hypnotherapist and he told him to stop smoking, he didn't want cigarettes anymore. That didn't make sense. It really didn't. So he started to read up about hypnosis and became fascinated and was so interested, he then went and trained to be a hypnotherapist and just started practicing privately as a hobby with friends and family. And so he thought it was a good idea. I thought, well, okay, well, let's try it. I trained to be a hypnotherapist then, and I actually found that I'd come home to something that was quite natural for me. And I often say that in every profession, there are some people who are naturally in that profession. So there are, some natural musicians, natural sports people, natural TV personalities, whatever. Well, I've just found I'm a natural therapist, and it was really like coming home. A part of me feels that's possibly because of past lives where I've been maybe a healer or something like that. But it just really just all fell into place, and that's how I got started. And in those days, I was what I call a bulk standard hypnotherapist. I was using what we call post hypnotic suggestion therapy in order to help my clients, which is basic hypnotherapy, which is where we relax the client, take them into a gentle trance, and then feed the deeper mind, the subconscious mind, with suggestions about changing for all sorts of issues. And that's how I began. Until one day when a client came in and absolutely blew my socks off and completely changed my career.
I mean, so you would say that originally you were doing things like smoking, stop smoking, and overeating, and you sort of stumbled upon this other layer that lies beneath all of that. And that's when you started really dancing into the direction of past life regressions, basically.
That's exactly it. What happened is a young fella came to me, maybe about 24 years old, with a severe anxiety state. And I really mean severe, Christy. I mean, he was sitting in front of me in my office, shaking and hyperventilating and stuttering and stammering as he was speaking. Um, and I thought, well, this is serious stuff. And I asked him a little bit about his anxieties, and he said, well, I've always been anxious. I've always been a worrier. Even as a child, I was a worrier. But he said it's got worse as I've got older. And then when the children came along a few years ago, it got much, much worse to such a degree that I now cannot work. I'm sitting at home all day shaking. I can't sleep. The doctor's given me medication, which has made it worse, which actually often happens. And he said, my wife's sick of it. She just says she's going to divorce me if I don't get any better. And so I thought, well, that sounds really serious. So, with the tools in my tool bag in those days, I then guided him into trance, into a very nice hypnotic state. And to my relief, he relaxed beautifully. He just completely softened in my chair and went into a very deep state of relaxation. And I thought, great, this is good. I'm on a winner here. So I'm then just giving him some post hypnotic suggestions to feel better in himself, to feel more at ease and calmer. And he was beautifully relaxed. And then, after about 10 minutes, he suddenly started to shake. He became tense. He was moving around and flailing around. And then he started to whisper in a loud voice, no, no, they're coming. No, hide. Hide in here. Quickly, hide. Shh, quickly. Bring the children. Hide, hide, hide. And he was massively tense. Then all of a sudden he started to scream and yell and writhe. No, 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 not the children. No, no, no. Ah!
Oh my god.
And he just laid in the chair completely prone. And I thought, hell's this? I wasn't expecting it. So he was totally calm. I said, how do you feel? He said, I feel wonderful. I feel absolutely wonderful. I've never felt like this in my life. I thought, well, I don't, because my heart was beating. And I mean, it was the reaction was 100 times bigger than I've just explained it, Christy. He was screaming and yelling and writhing, and I said, "What was happening?" He said it was weird. I was like I was a man in another body in another time, and soldiers were trying to find me and the children of my family, Nazis. And he said they we hid, and then they found us and they shot us all and killed us all. What was that about? I said, well, it's a past life. I mean, I wasn't trained to work in past lives. And in those days, this was 1992, 93. Very few hypnotherapists in the UK, especially, looked at past lives.
Did you even believe in past lives? Like, what was your personal spiritual belief system at the time?
Well, I was lucky in a way because I'd been a practicing Buddhist for a number of years. So I sort of fell into Buddhism, into the concept of reincarnation in my teens. And it absolutely fascinated me because reincarnation made sense to me. For me, it was the only spiritual philosophy that made sense of life. And so I read about it, became very interested in Buddhism, and subsequently, a few years later, began my Buddhist journey and was, practicing as a Buddhist and took Buddhist vows, etc. So I knew about past lives, but from the perspective of regression, it was not something I'd trained in or really done anything of. But that fella was cured, Christy, in 15 minutes. This problem he'd had for all of his life was completely fixed. And I thought, I need to know about this because this is important. Why don't I know about this? So I got some information from the American Past Life Association and started then to develop and practice and play with it. I used to do past life regression group workshops, which were fascinating. And in fact, I'm in the process of spending a lot more time in Florida nowadays. So I'm starting to do these workshops over in Florida as well, because it's incredible when you get a group of people together and they all go into their own past lives and then afterwards share what they had in the regression sessions. It's fascinating. It really is.
I mean, I was gonna talk about this later, but I'll just drop it now. I mean, I tried to do quantum healing session to heal my own health issues,
Mm,
and I found, in your book, you laugh and joke and about people always asking you, "Was I under?"
mhm.
You know? And I'm curious to know, is there a line of people that are more able to get into a trance mode I'm also curious as to what it really truly is to feel like you were in the trance mode that you would generate the past life regression to arise from your subconscious. And finally, I don't see really images in my brain. And what do you do with people that can't visualize as well? I mean, I've been told that some people, when they close their eyes, can literally, it's like a movie theater. They see pictures, they see images. I don't experience anything like that. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts on with people that are harder to get into that state in order for you to pull that information.
Okay, good questions. Very good questions, actually. So, first of all, as hypnotherapists, we're always aiming to emphasize that trance is natural. So people see the Hollywood stuff, which is drivel. Trance is a totally natural state. We all go into trance at least 24 times a day when we daydream, when we're an automatic pilot in the car, driving along, not realizing we're driving, when we drift into sleep, when we drift out of sleep, when we focus into a book, when we're watching a movie. All of these are trance states. So trance generally is a sort of a focus state. In hypnotherapy terms, we tend to um, ally that focus state with relaxation. So, what I tend to say to my clients is think relaxation. That you'll be on the right tracks. It's not going into a sleep state, it's not going into coma, it's not being under anesthetic and not knowing what's happening. And this is what in the book you're quite right. I make fun of this because you know people often say, "Well, was I under?" It's not under. You don't go under a relaxed state. You go into a relaxed state. You don't go under trance. You go into trance. And if I had a pound for the number of times that clients have said that at the end of a session, I'd be quite a rich man. And I usually sit there with gritted teeth. Was I under? Oh. And people say, "But I could hear what you were saying." Well, you're not deaf. Of course you can hear what I'm saying. But I could have
Yes.
opened my eyes if I wanted. Yeah, well, you're not asleep. You're just in a relaxed state. Think relaxation. So the first thing is that trance is natural, and we all can access trance to some degree. The degree to which people go into trance, however, is different and unique to each individual. So some people are in light trance through the sessions, some people go deeper into medium trance, other people go into a deep trance state. And that tends to happen in my sessions quite naturally. My belief is that client's subconscious knows how deep it needs them to be in that session. So I don't spend 40 minutes getting my clients deep into trance. It's not necessary. So that's the trance experience. Some people, having said that, are more hypnotizable than others. And round about 25 to 30% of people go into trance really quite easily. And usually those type of people do tend to get a lot out of a past life regression or a regression session. People who are average at hypnosis, they tend to experience more of a relaxation rather than a very focused state of inner awareness. So somebody who's very good in trance will tend to be very focused in the session. They'll be aware of me, they'll be aware of sounds outside, but those things tend to be more in the background. Whereas somebody who's average in hypnosis, they'll be more aware of what's going on outside and around them. With regard, though, to people who are not too visual, and I understand this completely, Christy, because I am completely non-visual, which people who are visual, that means they can see pictures in their mind's eye very easily. Can't understand how people like you and I can't get that. I mean, there are some people, I could get them to imagine being on a beach and they would be able to visualize picking up sand and grains of sand draining down through their hands. If I try that, I just get an orange blob. So, with somebody who is non visual, I mean, most people can visualize, but some people are very visual. But some people, like you and I, are very poor at visualization. It tends to mean that our main strengths are because remember the five senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. If you're non-visual, it tends to mean that you are mainly kinesthetic. So your main sense is emotions and feeling and touch. You also may be auditory as well, rather than visual. Now, I'll be quite honest, most hypnotherapists don't understand this. most regression therapists do, and they will aim to get a client back into, let's say, a past life using a visualization technique. And when it doesn't work, they think, oh, it's not worked. Okay, I can't help you. My way is to work kinesthetically, is to take you back into a past life so that you can explore it through feelings and through touch. Now, that's a different way of working, and I specialize in that way because I'm non-visual myself. So it is possible to get into past lives, and then what we're doing, we're using your intuition. So, for example, when I'm working in my past lives in regression, things come to me when I'm in trance. I've come to trust my intuition. I never used to. I was a typical man all those years ago. Um, but now things come and I trust that. And I think, okay, let's follow that through. And I find that actually takes me back into something. And then I tend to get information and feelings. So most of the work is then done kinesthetically with touch, with emotions coming through. Sometimes the body shakes. Sometimes in order to release trauma, there are different ways of doing that. So it is possible to, and also I use a technique, a regression system that I've created. I sound all excited, don't I? Because I am excited. This is great stuff. A regression technique whereby I ask my client subconscious to take control of one of their fingers, and it moves all by itself quite spontaneously. And then I just ask yes, no questions of the subconscious. And I ask questions which then tells us what's happening. So if I guided you into a past life and you went back into a past life and you couldn't see anything, and you may be saying, well, it feels as though I'm standing up, or it feels as though I'm outside, or it feels as though there's a with me. I will then say, are you a male in the past life? No. Are you female? Yes. So now we know that you're female. Are you an adult? No. An adolescent? No. A child? Yes. And so we can then build a picture of what's happening in the past life without getting pictures.
It really makes you feel how really are we in control of our own bodies and stuff if you could put somebody in a trance and ask them questions and they themselves are not answering, yet their subconscious mind is the subconscious mind our higher self? They say that they were here in a in a meat bag, just about, with a spirit within our energetic spiritual light. And I feel like the more I talk to people in this arena about spirituality, about the nature of reality, it feels to me like our subconscious mind is another word for our higher self that is not so much that is that has some sort of control over the physical body that we're not aware of completely.
My belief, having done this work for over 33 years now, is that we all have a higher self. My belief is that the higher self either is the subconscious or is intimately connected to it, which means that when we're working in trance with the subconscious, we're using the all knowing, all wise part of the person,
Yeah.
which knows
Yeah.
everything, which is connected to everything. And
Yeah.
therefore, and this is one reason why hypnotherapy is so powerful, because the subconscious mind is the 99.9% of the mind that we don't tap into overtly. But also, it has this amazing wisdom, and it knows where the client needs to go, it knows what needs to be done. When somebody comes to me with, let's say, with a phobia or a depression or anxiety state or a physical illness, doesn't matter what the issue is, all of those issues are caused by traumas in the past which are locked in the subconscious. And so the regression model is about opening up the traumas to release them. The client consciously doesn't know that, but the subconscious does.
Well, that was kind of going to be my next question. Nice segue is to talk about disease, illness, and what can you alleviate or cure and what can't you? Is it mainly emotional trauma from prior lives that are causing illness, like the origins of illness? Let's get into all of what you can heal people from through this process.
Okay, the regression model is that all of our issues as human beings come from locked in feelings and emotions from past traumas. Now, that's all issues. So, emotional issues such as anxieties, phobias, depression, excuse me, relationship issues, sexual issues, addictions, etc., etc. These are all caused by locked in emotions. The same with physical illness. And of course, the great advocate for this was Louise Hay. In her book, You Can Heal Your Life, she was really the forerunner of what we're doing nowadays in regression terms. And for her, every physical illness has emotional causes. So if we're able to open up those causes and release them, then the body can start to get better. Now, that doesn't mean to say you don't have to look after yourself and do healthy things, but in my opinion, if you don't work on the emotional causes of illness, there's a possibility that the illness will keep coming back or it will come back in a different way. So the concept of regression is as if the problem, the issue is like a weed that grows up. And a lot of therapies aim to chop the weed down. And that can work, without doubt, it can work. Excuse me, but unfortunately, the weed may grow back up again. So you may work on a physical illness, but 3 months later it comes back. Or it comes out in a different way. The classic with that is depression. Depression is always caused by locked in anger. It's not. The chemical imbalance in the brain theory is just a lie that was created by drug companies in the 70s. It's caused by locked in anger. So if we're working on the, if we don't work on the roots of the anger, and we chop the weed down, the depression weed, it may get better. But a few months later, skin problems come through instead. So a person will develop skin problems instead because that's also caused by locked in anger. So the regression therapist is our aim is to get into the traumas in the past. So for example, it may be that a person with back problems has been stabbed in the back in a past life. And that energy of the stabbing remains in the body in this lifetime. It comes through, and therefore we have to release the energy and the emotion that's caused the blockage in the energy field now in this life.
It is so mind-bending, fascinating, hard to believe that, after reading your book, it was just such a, illumination to the complexities of what and who we are when it comes to our lives and how connected they are. You speak of people, clients that continuously are reliving lives with the same souls down here in the most traumatic circle of depravity, of terrible trauma that seems to be a resurging theme and life after life after life of either them violently, traumatically impacting somebody else, and then that same soul in the next lifetime is violent and traumatic and terrible to them in return. What can you talk a little bit about some of your worst cases in that arena? Like, I know I couldn't pronounce her name. It was like a Silge, Silge?
Celia,
Um,
Celia, she was in
Cilia.
Norway. Yeah.
I mean, she had some of the most traumatic life experiences, and many of these occurrences were with the same exact soul in every single lifetime. Can you talk a little bit about that cycle and how you can break it? How you could break that?
Yeah. Well, Celia was a beautiful lady in Norway who had a difficult relationship with her husband, and it was becoming more and more difficult. Now, let me preface before I share this story from the book. I've worked. Most of my clients are female. 75% of my clients are female. Men are difficult about therapy. There's nothing wrong with men. They're all tight asses. We don't need therapy, which is pretty crass, but that's the way a lot of men are. Um,
We're gonna get into the whole man thing in this show. I'm gonna mention that
okay,
too.
good. So, but what I've often found over the years is when a woman has good therapy, it strengthens her. She becomes stronger as a person. Now, what then happens in the relationship is that she's more able to stand up for herself and not let this man crush her or overween her, which often happens in relationships. At that stage, the man has a choice. So he can either change, start to respect her more, and live in a proper, conscious, respectful relationship, or it's time for them to separate. End of story. So that isn't the outcome that I want. I mean, I'm just there to get my client better. But often the dynamics of therapy are that the woman becomes stronger and she realizes is what she's got is not what she wants. And therefore, they talk about it. Is he going to change? Is he going to have counseling and therapy with her, marriage guidance therapy, whatever? Is it? If he isn't, then she's got a decision to make. Now, Celia's, sorry, you were going to say something now.
No, no, no. I was no, no, no. Go ahead.
Now, Celia's relationship with her husband was difficult and it was getting more and more difficult. And we found, I think there were 14. In fact, do you mind if I get my notes? Because there are so
No,
many,
no.
I've written about so many past lives in this book. There are maybe several hundred of them. And in Celia's case, there were 17 past lives which were which were connected to causing the issues with her husband. And we worked through all of these 17 past lives over several months. The She also suffered from low self-esteem, which was perfect for a man who was a bit of a clever dick. Um, she was also quite needy as a result of childhood. She'd been badly bullied in childhood, so we had to do some work to heal her childhood issues. Um, the first past life, she was a young boy, probably in England in maybe 200 or 300 years ago, who was begging and begging to keep the family in food. The father was a brute. And one day, when this young boy goes home without any food, the father beats him up. And in fact, beats him so badly that he kills him. The next past life, she was burnt to death as a witch. And I've found hundreds, just as an aside, I've found hundreds of my clients over the years who have gone into past lives where they've been persecuted and killed as witches.
I mean, I will say this. After reading your book, I was not only very happy that I was born and I grew up in the time I did where women had some bit of rights, because after reading the barbarism, the violence against women in your book, it broke my heart that millions of women in prior years of the earth's existence have lived lives that were, I mean, absolutely barbaric, killed because they had an opinion. The whole episode of these beautiful healers that existed in times that were out there helping, and you would have these mass mobs of people yank them from their homes and string them up and burn them and drown them and run around with their torches and in glee, feeling like they have accomplished something, and somehow they felt safer inside after persecuting these women,
Yeah.
many of whom helped them in prior times with their own illness, and the cowards wouldn't even stand up and I mean, I I could go on and on and on about the stories, and it's different than watching a television show and seeing that happen, because you're reading real occurrences, real history. It's literally like reading a piece of history and getting inside that character's head and what they were thinking, what they were feeling, even up to the point of death.
Yeah.
So much so that even after they die, they'll give you how they felt. Either I was very happy to leave that life because it was so torturous for me and I was beaten every day of my life. Or I'm very sad that I was killed so early. I didn't deserve that. Like, it was just so amazing. Anyways, go ahead.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
I
I
mean,
got off track
no,
there,
you're
but
quite
like,
right. I mean, the brutality, and we
it
still
was
see it to some
just,
degree now around the world. There are still many countries, of course. But
we do. And I also feel like there is a rise in our culture, especially in the States, of men trying to yet again suppress women, relegate them to the caregivers, n- get rid of all these self-empowered women that we have today out of fear. I mean, we need to have the rise of the feminine divine in our world more than ever.
mm,
Men have been terrible at running the societies in general.
Yeah.
They are brutal, they're violent, they are they are egotistical, and they are just it made I don't wanna be a man hater, I certainly don't. There's plenty of good, conscious,
Mm,
deep thinking men in the world, and I certainly would never ever say anything but that.
mm,
But we need to be doing better with our men and understanding, who they are and what they need in order to be defenders, not a violent,
mm.
barbaristic brutes that they are. Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I mean,
Anyways,
I actually feel that the world is changing. I do feel that women are coming back to power more than ever before, and it's a tough fight for them. I understand that, but we're still in patriarchal societies around the
yes.
world, and men have screwed the world up for long enough. We really have.
Yep.
It's about time women started to take over and run things
Yes.
in a much more intelligent way. So I
Exactly.
completely agree.
I agree as well. But that's in a whole nother podcast.
Really is, yeah. Well, going back to the witches, I mean, it was like
Yes.
a madness. I mean, it's estimated that about 200,000 people were brutalized and killed in those centuries around the world, which is just insane. But
Insane.
what I am finding very often is the people who died in that way in past lives are actually they're in this present lifetime, are often very clairvoyant. They're often becoming psychics and mediums. It's as if they're bringing through an energy, like a thread from the past life into now, and that's a wonderful thing. So in that way, they suffered then, but they brought that energy through, and it's now being able to prosper on Earth because people are more able to be psychics and mediums, etc.,
Yeah.
and it's much more accepted.
Yep.
So going back to Celia,
Yep.
so she was burnt to death as a witch with her father watching her. She wasn't a witch, but he did nothing to save her. The father in that life is her husband or was her husband in a present life. And this happens time after time throughout all of these past lives. They're together in different ways. The next past life, she was executed. She was had her head chopped off for stealing as a man, but she was betrayed by a friend. The friend is her husband now. She was a pregnant woman in India whose husband tried to abort the child by punching her in the stomach. She managed to defend herself and she knifed him and killed him, but she was hung for killing the husband. She went into another past life. I'll just run through a few of them,
Yes.
where she was a woman who was regularly being beaten by her husband in the past life. Her husband now, she stopped eating and died because it was such a bad time. She went into another past life where she was a twin in the womb, but the other twin was miscarried, and the twin in the womb was her husband now. And she spent the rest of that life, once she was born, feeling loneliness and guilt. So just time after time after time. Now, what happened as a result of the therapy is she grew in herself as a person. She grew stronger and stronger. And he didn't like this. So she gave him plenty of opportunity to talk. Look, let's look at this in more depth. Our relationship isn't right. He wouldn't have anything to do with it. And so eventually she had to make the decision, I'm sorry, this is not right for me. And she separated and divorced. And the beautiful thing is, within I think 2 or 3 years, she met a wonderful man who is very much in love with her. They got married. They've had at least one more child, and she's very, very happy. So that wasn't the aim of the therapy, but she got a lot of very positive outcomes as a result of it.
I wonder if that is a way in which you can break that cycle. I'm very interested to understand why we keep repeating the same exact kind of traumatic experiences in every single life, and it happened a lot with many of your clients. Is they were experiencing very similar trauma in each life, and I don't know if that is they're not learning the lesson in that life, so they need to repeat, or if is it a cycle that they need to break? What are your thoughts on that? What is the reasoning for these traumatic events that keep on reoccurring in each lifetime with the same people?
I mean, it's not always easy to say exactly what it is when it comes to the law of karma, but karma is a law of cause and effect. So what happens now, you've got to, at some stage, reap the rewards or otherwise of it. And, in a lot of lives where we're just trying to survive, I think it's a bit much to ask people in those past lives to become aware of what's happening in their life. I mean, for centuries, for countless thousands of years, most people have just been in survival most of the time. We're so fortunate in the last 100 years or so, maybe longer than that, where many people have got time to think and philosophize and start to understand things. And I think the growth of therapy over the last 100 years has been a part of a growth whereby we are now coming to a stage where we can understand we live many lives, we make many mistakes, we reap the law of karma, as you sow, so shall you reap. But at some stage, you can break that pattern. And you break the pattern either by having an awareness of what's gone in the past, or you break the pattern by releasing the energies from the past, or you break the pattern by growing spiritually and developing yourself into a being who is in love more than anything else and who exhibits love in the world. Those type of things, I believe, help us to cut the cords, if you like, to snap the threads from the past that we're bringing through. Why we have to go through this process, I honestly don't know. The traditional view of karma is that we live many lives, we grow as a soul over many lifetimes until eventually we don't have to get reborn down here on planet Asylum. We can start to live at higher levels in spiritual realms.
I am in that camp currently myself. I mean, my whole backstory is I was an atheist for many, many years, and then I had a health crisis, and I've been had a spiritual awakening, and I have been developing and investigating my own belief system. And I feel like the law of karma, reincarnation, it makes the most sense to me. And the more and more I talk to people that are in the spiritual world, and I listen to all kind of channelers, and like I listen to it all. There's no barriers for me. Like I'm an open book. I embrace all, belief systems, and I try and make sense of it as far as how I fit into this world. And reincarnation to me makes the most sense as to how complex the human experience is and how many lives we really live down here.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, you even talk in the book about people telling you about having lives as animals on this plane.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about what you think that means and what have you learned?
Well, it doesn't happen very often. I mean, there is certainly a spiritual viewpoint that once we achieve a human rebirth, we don't get reborn as animals. And that's, I think, a sort of a spiritualist viewpoint. I can't agree based on my experiences with clients who occasionally seem to go through past lives as animals. Now, those past lives tend to be over very quickly, but they can still experience a degree of fear in those lives, which is affecting them now. And certainly, I had one client with a severe allergy, and allergies have also got emotional causes, surprisingly enough. And she went into several past lives where she was, I think she was one, she was a squirrel, in another, she was a rat that got run over, in another, etc., etc. So it happens occasionally. And my thoughts are it's really just about releasing the fear that that animal has experienced as generally as a result of death. And it should be said that most past life regression is releasing death trauma. Not always, but a lot of it. So it's all these little bits of death go in the melting pot into the pressure cooker, the emotional pressure cooker. But the animal lives tend to be fairly quick, and a bit of fear and then they're over. But it still means there's still fear in there.
If you learned anything from this episode on this show, I think the biggest takeaway is how powerful our emotions are and how much they impact us throughout various lifetimes. We hold on to pain and fear and trauma And the best things that we could do for ourselves is to get into therapy to release. One of the things that I've done over the last few years is I got certified in something called emotion code, which is muscle testing your body to find trapped emotions to release them with a magnet. And I do that regularly as I work on myself, releasing my own trapped emotions. I don't know how much it's helping my overall health issues. I still struggle with health, but I do feel like it gives me a sense of balance that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise. And I just can't emphasize enough, like, the power of your emotional state can affect and impact you. Like, it's everything, really,
Yeah.
it really is.
We are
Um,
reacting 24 hours a day.
yeah,
24 hours a
it's
day, we are reacting to our subconscious inner emotional pain. And everybody has it. It's
yeah,
people say, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with me." People who say that, usually is a lot wrong with them.
yeah.
They're just not honest enough to admit that they've got emotional baggage.
And also, I don't think we pay attention to our emotions enough, like acknowledging what we're feeling, registering it, and asking ourselves, why am I feeling this way?
Mm.
What is this trying to teach me? Why am I living in anxiety? There's a lot of information beneath the actual emotion that we should start
Yeah,
contemplating and thinking about and analyzing so we can fix it. Because I do think things like the prevalence of cancer, the prevalence of all the diseases that are coming up are emotionally attached, to our bodies, and our bodies are reacting to our emotional well-being at the time.
yeah.
Um, One of the other things that I thought was, like, mind-blowing was when you did surgery, on that woman, Emma, with no anesthesia, just using hypnotherapy. Can you tell that story? Because that was like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's quite an amazing story. Even now, I feel so fortunate to have been able to help her. Emma was a lady in her 30s when she first came to me, and she had to be almost carried up my stairs to my office. She was in such a bad way. She was about 35 years old, and she had a very serious and rare liver disease, which hardly anybody has heard of. There's only 12 cases in the UK at any one time, and hers was the most aggressive. And really, very few people, if any, survive this liver disease. And she sat in front of me in the first session in my office, and she looked like a stick insect. She looked dreadful, and she just said, "You're my only hope. I've been given 6 months to live." And basically, the tumours that were growing on the liver were not cancerous, but they got to the size of sort of grapefruits. And what they did is they pushed all the inner organs out of the way and caused intense pain and nausea. So she couldn't eat. So she could hardly eat anything. When she ate, she just vomited. She was in pain all the time, really distressing pain. She spent most of the time just laying on a sofa. And she had a young 3-year-old daughter. She couldn't do anything with her. And, she was losing weight. She was doped up to the eyeballs on morphine. And she just said, "You're my last hope," which is a hell of a pressure for a therapist, of course. And I was lucky because she was one of the people who is good in hypnosis. And so we had a talk, and I told her about the emotional causes of illness. But in our first session, I did some basic hypnotherapy, guided her into trance, gave her some post hypnotic suggestions to relieve the pain. And she came out of trance, and the pain level had dropped from 10 out of 10 to 4 out of 10, just with 30 minutes of hypnosis. And she looked a lot better. She was able to walk out my office and leave unaided. And that was the beginning of a journey of healing, which went on for some time, working initially on the emotional causes of the liver disease, childhood trauma, releasing childhood trauma, and two past lives. One of the past lives, she was a Native American squaw, and a raiding party from another tribe came into her village, and she was grabbed from behind and stabbed in the back with a dagger and killed. And of course, where did the dagger go? Straight through where the liver is in this life. Second past life, she was a young 16-year-old Polish boy stabbed and bayoneted by the Nazis in the Second World War and then thrown into a river. Again, where did the bayonet go? Through the liver. So she'd brought that weakness, you could say, in that area of her body from the past lives. Now, when we released that trauma, it meant that the body could start to heal. And what actually happened is that the tumor stopped growing. It actually stopped growing. And because she was getting so well in herself, because I mean, even after the first session, a week later, she'd come off morphine. She didn't need it anymore. The pain level was dropped. Her own mind was softening the pain, and so she could start to eat more. And she got stronger and stronger to such a degree that her surgeon decided that she should have an operation again, which he tried twice previously, and it was a complete disaster. The first time they damaged the liver itself. The second time they damaged her gallbladder, so she had to have a gallbladder removed.
Oh my god.
So she was now so much better, and he said, "Well, let's try the operation again." I rather foolishly said, we'll do it in hypnosis," and then thought, "Oh, hang on, did I just say that?" Because we don't get trained as hypnotherapists to do hypnosurgery. But the problem was with the surgery is that she had to drink a dye down, which then would sort of show up on a screen in the operating theatre what was happening in that area of the body. And she's highly allergic to virtually everything. So in the previous two ops, she drunk the dye and spent the whole of the surgery vomiting and retching. And there's the surgeon trying to do a delicate operation to thread a plastic tube up through a blood vessel from the groin to the liver in order to put crystals through the tube. The idea was that they would attach to the tumours and cut off the blood supply and kill the tumours. But it had been a disaster. Twice it had taken, I think, 3.5 hours in surgery, and she was in hospital for weeks afterwards. So I didn't think the surgeon would agree to it, but I think he was quite desperate, so he said yes. So in the book, I play up the craziness of it all because some of it was pretty crazy, and the pressure that was.
100% crazy. I was reading it going, "What?"
Yeah.
But yeah, like, "What?" Nuts.
So the only person who had the problem with his surgery was me because I don't like blood, but I managed to hang in there. But I took Emma into trance while she was laid in the operating theatre, took her out of her body, anaesthetised her body so there was no feeling there, got her to disassociate, and imagine going on a journey with me around the stars. Excuse me, and we spent the whole of the surgery just moving around the universe to different star systems. And she wasn't sick once. The operation took 90 minutes. The surgeon at the end of it said, I cannot believe what I've seen. It was like operating on a dead body. He said there were no defensive reflexes at all. And, he was just fascinated with it. And that,
I mean, the power of the mind is beyond anything that you can really comprehend when you talk about putting somebody in a hypnosis and then doing surgery on them and taking them out of their body. I mean, it does speak to would you call that have you heard of astral projection?
yes, yeah, 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 yeah.
I- is would you put that in alignment with astral projection when you're taking somebody out of their body and going through the cosmos in a way their conscious is leaving their physical body?
That's
Yes?
clever.
No?
I've never thought of that. That's never been pointed out, and I think there's a good chance there is a link there, Christy. Yes, there's a good chance that what we did that day was a form of astral projection, get her to leave her body and then move around
Yeah.
someplace. Yeah, that's a good thinking. I never thought of that. No, that's clever. I'll think about
I mean, that's what I thought of when I was reading it. I was like, this feels very much like an astral projection, hypnotic trance situation where her consciousness is leaving her body so it can be worked on. And you are ushering her, taking her through a journey in her own out of her body.
that. Yes,
That's what it read like
yes,
to me. And I thought that was just absolutely amazing. If we could do surgery on people without having to put them under on a regular basis, I mean, I know there's only one of you, so it's like, it's
well,
not
it is
practical
possible. There are,
right now.
there are many hypnotherapists around the world who could be trained to do this work.
Yeah.
And although, I mean, not everybody would want to be in trance, some people would want to be under anaesthetic. That's understandable. But for quite a large percentage of the population. I mean, Dr. Escudero was a Spanish surgeon. He did all of his surgery without any anesthetic. He did over 10,000 operations, and he
Oh,
didn't use
wow.
formal trance, but I used some of his techniques for pain management and also with Emma in the surgery. So it's so possible to do, but it's ignored. Now, in my opinion, every birthing room, every hospital where women are giving birth should have hypnotherapists on duty 24 hours a day. Every hospital should have trained hypnotherapists who are there to help people to be in trance throughout surgery. It's not right for everybody, but the healing that goes on afterwards, the body heals faster when there's no anesthesia in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's certainly possible, but it's not looked at. The great thing is that Emma is now 29 years past her die-by date. It's just
That
extraordinary.
it's fascinating, it really is that in a medical it should be in a medical book somewhere if it's not. I hope it is, it should be. All right, I also wanna get a little bit into spiritual attachments in your book. You talk about people having other energies, other, I don't know what you would I guess they're spiritual attachments. I don't know if they're prior people from why don't we talk a little bit about your experience with finding other energies attached to people that are affecting their overall well-being and their health? I thought that was like
Mm,
next level
yeah,
stuff right there.
bit more woo woo than the past life
Yeah,
stuff,
I
but it
love
still
it.
happens.
Bring it
But yeah,
on.
well, spirit attachments. Basically, there are spirits which don't fully move on when they die. When a person dies, what usually happens is we move off into the spirit world, and we move off and experience sort of some healing. We'll stay in spirit for some time before we look ahead to the next life, and then we're reborn, etc. But sometimes a person won't, they become earthbound. And so, obviously, the most well known aspect of this are ghosts. But sometimes spirits connect to people. And that can particularly happen if the spirit is confused when they die, or shocked, or feeling very guilty, etc., and doesn't want to move on. Often, if they've been given the lie about hell, in their lifetimes, hell doesn't exist. It's just a Catholic premise to frighten people. But
Yes.
they may have been brought up with that in their lifetimes and brainwashed in it. So when they die, they think, well, I did all those bad things. I'm going to go to hell, so I don't want to go there, so I'll stay here. And these spirits will often just hook into somebody. They particularly hook into people who are depressed or who are low mood, because their energies are quite spiky and they're easy to hook into. But what happens is we then pick up on the spirit's energies. So if they're scared and anxious, we become scared and anxious. If they're down and depressed, etc., etc. And because we don't realize they're there, they can stay with us all our lives sometimes. We'll then live our lives without being free of their energies. So spirit release is about sending the spirits home. It's about letting them go to where they should have gone when they died, which is a place of love,
Yep.
and reassuring them that that is okay to do that. I find that the vast majority of these spirits are just helpless and lost and confused. There are a small number which appear to be more malevolent and more unpleasant, but in my opinion, I think that those types of spirits particularly hook to people who have got psychiatric illness. And of course, we can't do hypnotherapy type work with people who have psychiatric illness. It's not right. But there's a school of thought again that many of these people have got spirit attachments which are not nice ones, more difficult, more malevolent, and that is one of the reasons why they're having all these mental problems.
I agree with that. I've talked to a few people on this show that talk about spiritual attachments, and they talk about how common they are because they can cause disharmony in the body. They can cause physical pain. They can cause emotions that we don't understand. Why am I feeling this way? I don't understand it,
Yeah,
and that it is much more common than people think it is.
yeah,
And obviously, your belief system very much affects whether or not you would even entertain the possibility that this could be something that could affect you. If you don't believe, lots of people say, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe, in this kind of woo woo stuff.
Mm.
But if you believe it all in energy, and we are energetic beings, basically, it makes perfect sense that other spiritual entities could attach to our own personal energy. I don't think that's a gigantic leap in the belief of even somebody who's not woo woo like I am. Like if you really walked down that path in a logical way, well, like if we're really this, and I think more and more people are starting to understand that we are energetic beings. We are made of energy. We're swimming in some sort of matrixy energetic quantum mechanics is more and more and more illuminating us to just that we are energetic by nature at the core of what we are.
Yeah. And
So,
people, having said that, I mean, you mentioned the word belief there as well, Christy, and
yeah.
people don't have to have, for example, in past life regression, my clients don't always have a belief in past lives. They don't need that. If their subconscious says there are past lives that need to be worked on and we can work on them, they will get better. They don't have to believe in past lives after that. They can think it's just a metaphor. It usually isn't a metaphor, but that's a cop out, but it gives them an excuse to get better without having to believe in past lives. But it's the
Yeah.
same with
Yeah.
spirit attachments. And we don't have to believe that they're there, but the technique I use, this idea of asking the subconscious, because I don't know if a client comes in, I don't. Occasionally, I'll have a suspicion there may be a spirit attachment, and I will say it doesn't happen all the time. It's something that happens regularly, but I can't say that. I'm working 5, 6, 7 days a week seeing clients. I can't say that every day I'm doing spirit release work. Maybe every few weeks there'll be one, but it is more than people will be prepared to give it credence for. But people don't need to believe that. But the subconscious will say, I can ask the question, like, are there any spirit attacks? Oh, yeah. Ah, okay. And then we do work to send them home.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm interested in finding out if it's a possibility that I have something of a spiritual attachment, especially in the last few years of my life. I've had you know, weird things happen to me. Anyways, we'll talk offline on that. Maybe you
Well,
can,
there tend
you
to be
know.
two types of spirit attachments. There are the unwanted ones, but there are also the wanted ones, our loved ones who are still around us in spirit, who are just sort of sending us love and affection and compassion, etc., or who want to be with us until we die and meet up with them again. And of course, that type of spirit, that's fine. Having said that, sometimes they come a bit too close to us. And if we pick up on their energies, then they wobble our energy, so they have to back off a bit. But generally, there are these two types. So, the ones that need to go, need to go. The other ones that can stay, we just say, just back off a bit and send your love from 100 meters instead of 10.
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming up on an hour, but I have just a couple of more questions. Do you have some time?
Absolutely, please, yes, yes.
I wanted to talk about your experiences with people with past lives and aliens
Mm.
and what your thoughts were. Can you tell us some of those types of episodes and what the outcome was and what happened?
Yeah. In the book, I'm speaking about clients who came to me who appear to have had contact or abduction experiences with extraterrestrials. Going on from that, something that's been happening more recently is a lot of clients who have had past lives on other planets as extraterrestrials. Now, I don't write about that in the book. That's something maybe for the next book because it's quite amazing how that's happening. So it appears that if a person has a contact experience, then that doesn't mean to say it's a negative experience, although we know that some abduction appear to be negative. That the conscious mind is wiped by the extraterrestrials, so that the person has no knowledge of it or no memory of it. But sometimes the wiping isn't as good as it should be, so the person still gets a sense of something that may have happened. And one of the experiences in the book was a young girl who came to me, a teenage girl, who was having all sorts of sort of behavioral issues and anxiety issues. and her subconscious took her back, because I'm always about the root cause of the issue. It took her back to when she was about 7 years old, staying overnight at her grandparents' home and laying in bed when a mysterious sort of being, this big sort of Michelin man, appears in her bedroom, and she was very scared. But then telepathically, it was speaking to her. It's okay. We're going to go and have a ride. We're going to have some fun here. It's okay. So the little girl then held this being's hand, and they flew out through the wall of the house, flew up into a spacecraft which was waiting, so close to the house. And whilst this is happening in trance, she's laughing like mad. This is incredible. I'm flying with this being. Went through into the spacecraft, but then the being left and left her with these unpleasant little beings who were there to actually do some work on her. So they put her down on a table and started doing some surgery on her. And they didn't anesthetize her properly. So they put like a mask on her face and put something into her eye. She felt a lot of pain. So then they gave her something like a medicine which would null her a little bit or dull her pain. And she had a very unpleasant experience with them before they actually took her back down and put her back in bed in her grandparents' house. And she woke up screaming, and her grandmother comes to see her and says, "What's happening?" And as she's looking at her grandmother, she sees one of the beings slowly disappearing away into the distance, saying, "We'll see you again in the future." Now, that was obviously a very scary experience for her. And I'll be honest, it was early in my career, so I wasn't really too sure what to do. Nowadays, I treat it differently because I believe they put implants in her body, and where they can do it apparently either physically and or energetically. So they can put implants in our energy field. So nowadays, I would have done more work to see about releasing those implants and taking them away and getting them taken away. But certainly, as a result of releasing the memory, she felt a lot better in herself. She felt a lot calmer. But as I say, nowadays I would be doing some work because the chances are sometimes if people have a contact experience, they have more than one contact experience over time. So there is a possibility that she will have had more contact experiences. And I would certainly be doing work to protect her from that now if I could.
What are your personal thoughts on alien beings? Are you somebody that is open to that concept, or do you feel like maybe in those instances it is a subconscious mind using a metaphor rather than a literal, like, what are your own what's your own belief on
I mean,
that?
just on one level alone, the fact that, to believe that in the millions and millions and millions of planets, etc., that are out there, that there's only life on Earth, I think you've got to be pretty stupid to believe that. I really do. So, but I would say with all of the many thousands of stories of people having contact experiences, if one of those is true, then aliens exist, extraterrestrials exist. So I think it's very stupid just to say all these people are making it up.
Yeah.
The question is, why would these people make this up? Because in so many cases, by coming out, they face ridicule and persecution sometimes. They have no benefit to coming out with these stories. So why would they want to do that if these things weren't real? And why would they imagine these stories? Why would they imagine that they've been in a spaceship if it never really happened? It doesn't make sense. So for me, I can't say for all the cases. Of course, some of them will be people who make things up, but many of them are actually very true and very real. So for me, I'm definitely in the camp that yes, there are extraterrestrials, there are beings on other planets, and the sooner they come and help us down here, the better, because we're in a bloody mess down here.
I 100% agree. I'm in your camp. I absolutely think it's outrageous that we would be the only species in this endless galaxies, universe expansion that we're all swimming in together.
Mm,
We are super unevolved down here, super violent, super barbaric, super don't know who we are, what we're doing.
mm,
We are like the dum-dums of the universe, I feel like.
yeah,
And we need We need beings of higher consciousness, extraterrestrials, aliens, whatever you want to call them, to illuminate us to what we're really supposed to be doing here. I feel like humanity in general is very much asleep. I also feel like there is a great awakening happening out there. I think more and more people are starting to understand our full capacities, understand that our history isn't quite what we thought it was, what we were taught it was,
Yeah.
that religion is more of a control mechanism than it is anything else. And I'm really looking forward to aliens joining the party. And hopefully, the only downside of that is so many people would experience it as a fearful rather than embracing it as part of who we are and who we should be becoming, you
Because there are
know?
so many people who have contact experiences and they have experienced great
Yes.
euphoria. So
Yep.
it isn't always negative or malicious.
Yep.
So, yeah, I totally agree with you, Christy. I really do.
I can't. This is my final question. I really, honestly, though, could talk to you for a very long time about this because you have so many stories in here. Like, even just take away the past life regression aspect and the hypnotherapy aspect, just the stories of the very traumatic lives that people have lived on this planet, short, traumatic, everything from being in a Holocaust camp, a Jewish camp, to a slave coming over in a ship when they were bringing slaves over. Like,
Mm,
and I'll say it again, it is different read when you're writing from a perspective of somebody who lived that life
mm,
and that was actually a part of what their soul experienced
mm.
than seeing it on a television. I actually work in film and TV. I'm an assistant director.
Okay.
So like I read scripts all the time. I work on movies, and I had a different visceral reaction reading your book, knowing that these were real lives that people led with the barbarism and the immense amount of ignorance that is out there, living strong
Yeah,
in our world today, even. And I really hope we are going to start evolving. And finally, I don't think there's a soul on this planet that couldn't benefit from this type of therapy, honestly.
mm,
Even if you don't have a phobia or you don't have a issue with depression or any other kind of illness,
yeah,
to clean up your emotional body, your emotional makeup is going to make you feel better and more harmonized in every single way. And I'm actually interested in getting a session with you. Like, I think like this could help me in my own health problems. And as much as I have done for myself here in the 3D plane, I certainly haven't done anything in my subconscious mind
mhm,
to benefit my health.
mm.
And I only think, I'm not saying it can cure me, I don't know, but I am open to it. And I think it can only benefit me and my mental well being and everything. So if you're out there, gang, how can people get a hold of you and have you assist them in their own journey here?
Of course. I mean, what I will say just before I mention that, if it's okay, is that,
Please.
the thing about having good therapy, and it doesn't matter what the therapy is, my belief is that regression therapy is the most powerful therapy that's available on earth. And of course, I would say that, but I've seen so many extraordinary healings over the last 33 years. I've done over 15,000 therapy sessions. This stuff works. If it didn't work, I would never have survived doing it.
Yeah.
But good therapy helps us to become less reactive. It means that we're calmer inside, we're more at peace with ourselves. So, any form of good therapy, just go and have therapy is such an important thing to do. We all should be working on ourselves to become more balanced. And I
Yep.
think that's very important. And not having faith in religions or this, that, and the other. Do the work on
Yep.
yourself
Yep.
in order to become a
Yep.
more balanced human being. That means you are more balanced and the collective energy becomes more balanced. So we all have a responsibility, I believe, to do that. But if you want to get hold of me, steveburgesshypnosis.com, that's the website. I always like people to look at my YouTube channel, which is Hypno for All, HYPNO, the number 4ALL, because that's got 26 free hypnotherapy recordings on there that can
Yep.
help people with all manner of issues, from anxieties, irritable bowel syndrome, give birth more easily, etc., etc. And it's my way of giving back to the world. I've been very fortunate in this career, so it's my way of saying there are people who can't afford therapy. At least that's a way of getting some free therapy. Also, there's a lot of information on there, interviews that I have with my team members, because I have a team of therapists who are all trained in my regression system, about the overall processes that we do. So that's Hypno for All. My Facebook is The Power of Past Life Regression, which was the title of my previous book. And so that's really how people get hold of me.
Do you do mainly in-person stuff, or is it can you hypnotize people over like a Zoom session? Is
I
that
do
possible?
everything online nowadays. And
Oh, great.
basically, before the scamdemic started, I didn't like doing online sessions, but obviously, once everybody gets locked down, I started to get requests from all around the world. And I'll be quite honest, Christy, I prefer doing online sessions now. I
Oh,
don't even do in-house sessions anymore. I actually
oh.
think they work better, which is surprising. 10 years ago, I would never have said that, but now, having done over the past 5 years so many thousands of sessions, um, I prefer doing online sessions because I believe my clients are more relaxed because they're at home.
That's a good point. It's a very good point, actually. Wow. Well, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, especially you men out there, get your behinds in some sort of therapy, preferably with this gentleman who will set you right and, hopefully unlock all of this trauma that I feel that men typically don't deal with. I mean, my word is all I got to say after reading that book. Pick up his book, gang. I will put it in the show notes. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon. Is there any other website out there that you
Yeah,
prefer for them to
Amazon,
look at?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Okay.
and all good booksellers. They all sell it. So yeah.
My my final question, can you really make my boobs bigger? You talk you talk about in the book that you can actually make women's boobs bigger, and I was like, "Really?"
Yeah. Yep, hypnotherapy, hypnosis for breast enlargement goes back to the 1930s, I think it is, and it can be very successful. Yeah, I don't do. I stopped doing it years ago because people are so skeptical, but it can work very, very well. Yeah,
Well, this is TMI maybe, but I part of my healing journey entailed getting my breast implants out because they were also contributing very heavily to my health problems,
yeah.
and I did feel markedly, like remarkably better after I did that. But and I'm living with my small chest. It is what it is at this point, But I was like, oh my word, if I could do hypnotherapy and get a little boost, like so into that.
It's possible.
All righty, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on this episode of Fate from Atheism to Enlightenment. I would like to thank my friend Steve for coming on board and sharing his stories. Pick up his book, The Adventures of a Hypnotherapist. Was I under? I will put it in the show notes and reach out to him and get a session. I know I'm going to. On that note, Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks.
We'll see you next week, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. And that is a wrap on this episode of Fate from Atheism to Enlightenment. Steve Burgess, guys. That was absolutely fascinating. I love doing this show. I love having these conversations. It always is so illuminating as to the complexity of what and who we are. We don't know nearly as much as we think we do. And Steve's book just emphasizes that on every level. I mean, pick it up. It's a great read because he really does bring out some extremely interesting stories that he's had over the years with the many clients that he served. I guess he's done this for years and he's had over 15,000 different clients that he has regressed into past lives. He's healed people miraculously. It is just unbelievably uh, stupefying how powerful our minds are and how the subconscious can affect the body. Most people have absolutely no idea how powerful it is. And until you sit down and you read these stories, you can't believe that it's real, because it just is mind bending. It really is. Um, so I really enjoyed having this conversation. I am going to go and get a hypnosis regression session with him. Hopefully, it'll give me some healing and peel some of the layers off of my own trauma. Lord knows I have a lot of trauma. We all do. We really do. I mean, trauma is something that affects everybody. Nobody gets out of this life without being exposed to some sort of physical, emotional, mental trauma. I mean, even getting out of childhood is like a war zone and in itself, especially when I grew up, like, there was no parents around. It was like Lord of the Flies out there. We were just doing our own thing, behaving like animals. And I was the lead of the pack, believe me. So I'm going to go get a session. I'm going to see what it will uncover for me. And I'm really interested to see if I'll be able to get into a trance that will allow me to reveal anything of deep prior lives. I'm very strong willed. I do have a strong mind. I think I have a hard time relaxing in situations like that and letting go and allowing something like the subconscious to surface. But we'll see. I mean, I'm sure he has cracked some tough cases in the past with people being maybe not as open to this, or being resistant to the process. And your beliefs are a lot to do with it. I mean, if you believe something to be true, your mind and body a lot of times will respond accordingly. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. What your expectations sometimes just manifest in its own right because your body, your brain believes it. So it's a tricky situation, but I will follow up with you and I will let you know how it goes. What maybe it'll be more than one session. I'm very curious to see what Steve can do for my health, my well being, and I highly recommend people getting this type of therapy. It is not very mainstream currently, but I do believe that this type of therapy, hypnosis, past life regression, is the future of medicine. The more we figure out that our emotions cause a lot of the damage that happens to our body, whether it be back pain, whether it be depression, whether it be something like liver disease or cancer. I mean, brain tumors, fibromyalgia, all these autoimmune disease that we don't seem to have any real medical resolve for at this time. I mean, the trauma that we've been carrying around in prior lives with prior experiences, it we don't recall it per se in our conscious mind, but our body recalls it, our soul recalls it and carries it, and it will come out in this lifetime in various ways. So it's kind of the reason why I'm going to move forward and do something like this, because everyone needs to get your body into alignment. Let that energy flow freely so it's not getting stuck by old trauma, by old baggage that we've been carrying around for how many, who knows how many lives. The other thing, there's so many things about this show that I want to just touch on, but one of them is the cycle of trauma that we go to with the same person, the same soul, dressed up in a different costume, maybe playing a different role in our lives, but the uncanniness of the nature of the trauma completely the same, just wearing a different exterior on the outside. I find that to be so fascinating, and I'm going to pay more attention to that in my life. Like, I don't have a husband, or I don't have, I'm trying to think of, like, in my life, who are the people that I would feel closest to that have impacted me in maybe a traumatic way that I'm going to see show up in my life again, or I have had in my life previously. Like, there's a few people in my life that I'm like, we've definitely had other lives together before. Like, the people that have been in my life for the longest, that have endured all of my, I've lived all over this country. I mean, I've been all over the place, but there have been people in my life that have just stayed consistent no matter what. And I do feel like those are probably my soul family people. Those people that just not only have known me since I was a child, but the people that you can pick up the phone and it doesn't matter if it's been 5 years, and it's like you're in alignment, you're right back where you were, not 1 second has passed. And we all talk about that. But I feel also maybe there's an additional layer there of knowingness with that person, that you have known them through other lifetimes. Like, I'm going to bring up my friend Tommy that I've known since I was 5. I'm very much a tomboy, and I have a 4 dudes that I grew up with that I'm still friends with, and we're still very close. And Tommy's one of them. I've known him the longest, and even though I've moved or whatever, and we don't talk all the time, we are super close still. He's experiencing his own awakening in a way. We align in so many things, and I know that we've had other lifetimes together. It just feels that way. So I am going to be paying more attention to that kind of thing. The other thing that I will say about reading all of these stories of clients is that humans really live sometimes extremely traumatic, hard lives. It was hard to read some of the stories. And I come from the movie industry, so I'm very, very familiar with storytelling. I've read a lot of scripts, I've worked on a lot of stuff, and it felt totally different reading these stories from a perspective that they were real, to them at least. They were real. They were real lifetimes with real trauma. And to listen to them tell their story of their deaths over and over again, of how they died, and then the moments after, how they felt once they died, was fascinating. And also, it just speaks to the seamlessness of our consciousness. Yes, we die, but when we die, it's like a transition. You transition into your spiritual light that you are, but your consciousness, your thoughts, your ability to look back at your body and be like, some people would say after they had experienced their death, that they were very happy to leave that lifetime, that it was a lifetime of hardship, trauma, pain, fear. And they were like feeling this overwhelming sense of calm come over them, that, oh, I'm out of that life. Everything's going to be okay now. And they would, you know, shortly after that, the story would end. But it was a fascinating perspective to be telling the story from, because most times you don't get the post death narrative. You get the death, and then that's it. But to listen to some people be grateful that they were leaving that life, that they were ready to leave that life. Some of them had grown old and they were ready, and their bodies were aged and they were ready to leave. Some people were extremely sad that they were leaving that life because they felt they had so much more to do in that life and so much more to learn, and they were sad. But regardless of whether they were happy or sad or whichever, shortly thereafter, everyone seemed to experience a sense of peace, calm, and knowing that they were safe, and that they started to understand, oh yes, the familiarity of being in that afterlife, that spiritual, that astral plane, that we all end up back at when we transition to our spiritual selves. So death is starting to be a very fascinating conversation to have, to me because I don't fear it. I don't think it's the end. I think it's a transition. I think I've said on the show before, I've had other mediums and whatnot tell me that this is my last go on the rock, that this is my last lifetime, that after this lifetime, I don't come back to this plane. And I kind of feel like it's true, particularly because I didn't have kids, and kids do create more karma. And more karma means you need to come back and resolve or deal with that karma. So that's a big piece where I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I'm not married. Um, so that's another karma inducing relationship that you can get into here. And not to toot my own horn, but I consider myself an old soul. Like I have knowingness in me. I have this interior wisdom. I always have. Whether I was an atheist and I didn't believe in God or not, I always had um, just an emotional intelligence within me that I saw things from a different perspective, regardless, which is probably why I was able to stand my ground and speak my mind my entire life, whether I was telling my parents I didn't believe in, the BS of religion, or speaking my mind at a very young age wherever I went till to this day. Like I've just been always extremely comfortable and authentic and unafraid to speak my mind, which leads me to my next little um, comment about the book. It really was shocking to me that women had so little say in their lives, so little power over anything in their lives, how brutal they were treated by men in the most barbaric, cold, cruel way you could possibly think of, treated as nothing. And, you know, I'm sure I lived through other lifetimes where I was a woman and maybe I had little to no power. I don't know. I don't remember. Maybe we'll find out. But I cannot imagine living like that. It seems so foreign to me. I'm so strong. My father did such a service to me when I was very young by me and my dad would fight, fist fight, wrestle, things like that. I would literally, like, he'd end up with a bloody nose sometimes. And when you're young and you're beating up your dad, you think in your own little 6-year-old mind that you are capable of beating up other people, beating up other boys. And that's kind of what I did. I went out. I was the toughest kid on my block. Tommy, I used to kick his ass. I mean, I have always been so comfortable around men. And even what I do today is very male energy heavy. And I'm super comfortable going toe to toe with men. I don't think about being a woman. I don't think about being less capable, less strong. Nobody pushes me around. I'll go toe to toe with anyone. And that is all my dad. That's all my dad giving me this, like, leveling the playing field with physicality, like going out there and kicking some ass when I was young. Like, it's weird how life ends up being. I lucked out. I've never felt less than men. I've always been, I just never even thought, it never even occurred to me. But when I was reading this book, I was like, what in the hell is going on out there with these men killing, beating, raping women for having strong opinions, for being at the wrong place at the wrong time, for being women that were pregnant and men didn't want them to have the baby and just beating them. I mean, there's just so many stories in there where the witches were the worst, that were just mob mentality of dragging women out of their homes, out of their places, and hanging them up and drowning them and walking around with pride that they had just, killed a a beast and they were holding their trophy up. I mean, we really have to have the rise of the feminine divine in our world. Women are way more emotionally intelligent. We are way more powerful in so many ways. We use our intuition. We don't, let's face it, not to be a dick to men, but like they are so led around by their dicks, they don't even know what to do with it. And they're lost and they're fearful. And women are just much more um, qualified to be running things in a system that we have today. We just are. And just because some dude can kick my ass now, which whatever, I don't think that gives them any kind of leeway to have any kind of say over my life, my body, what I do, where I go, how I manage my money, anything. So I do think that there is this element of men out there that think that they are in a position to take ownership over women again and take their power away from women. And I don't think, especially me, I'm not going anywhere, man. I will go toe to toe with you. Bring it on, bro. You don't know who you're messing with. I mean, it's just, anyways, the book was very disturbing. I'm very glad that I lived the life I lived, that I am who I am. I appreciate who I am. I appreciate who raised me. And if you have young daughters out there, let them kick their father's ass. It does a world of good. Trust me. I mean, not everybody. I was scrappy. I was already born like that. My other two sisters would just crawl up into a ball and scream and cry. Like, not every woman is like scrappy. I don't know. Whatever. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I loved this episode. I will keep you posted on my own past life regression. And I would love your support in all things my podcast. So please feel free to follow me on Instagram at F.A.T.E. podcast. And I hope that you are enjoying this as much as I am and you're learning and you're fascinated and you're open-minded and you're pursuing your own spiritual growth. That's what this is about. I mean, it really is about broadening your horizons, opening you up to information that you've never had before, and learning new perspectives. I just feel like people are so locked into their own ways of thinking. They don't really enjoy hearing new information that doesn't align with things that they already agree with. You can see it out there everywhere. It is bizarre times that we're living in, guys. The energy of the planet is chaotic. I'm seeing it. I am trying to center myself and keep myself grounded and do whatever I can do to continue to raise the vibration of this planet. Raise your consciousness. Don't get caught up in the drama. Don't do it. Keep yourself in a state of calm presence, living in the now. Try as best as you can to not, look down that pike too far, worrying about what's coming up next. And I'm saying that to myself. There's lots of reasons to be scared right now. There's certainly a ton of unknowns happening right now. And I empathize, sympathize, and I'm aware of everything that's happening. I'm just trying very desperately to stay above the fray and lean in and focus on good vibrations, good intentions, good things. What you focus on will grow in your life. And if you're living in fear, if you're living in hate, lots of hate going on out there, that is going to grow. It is. I just can't emphasize enough that your vibration matters. We're all connected. What you think, what you feel, what you say, it matters. It is energy. It will show up in your reality. I promise you that. It is a universal law. So, with that, I'm going to leave it there. We'll see you next week, guys, on Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment. And welcome to your fate, everyone. I'll see you next week. Bye.